Light the way to Glasgow and net zero, credible climate action. I love the way if you work in climate, you don't even bother to say COP26, you just say Glasgow and everybody knows exactly what you mean. What will happen in Scotland in November of this year? This next section is going to be masterfully presented, hosted, moderated by Paul Simpson. He is the CEO of CDP. Paul, I can't wait to hand over to you.
Thank you, Femi. Welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here for this really exciting session of the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit, as Femi has said, on credible climate action to create a 1.5 degrees C or lower world, lighting the way to Glasgow and net zero, a net zero economy. Now, we've seen absolutely fantastic momentum over the last few years, building and building and building net zero commitments, science-based targets, great progress. But we are still at a crossroads. Many climate plans do not yet meet the Paris Agreement and what the science required. That's changing every day and getting better every day, but we've got to be honest, we've got to do more. We still have a challenge. So we see very encouraging signs from governments, the private sector, companies, investors, cities, states and regions, and citizens. But we only have 8.5 years now to reduce emissions 50% and really get ourselves on that track to a net zero economy, keeping with 1.5. As we have all those commitments, they really need to be credible and to deliver what they are promising. So we're going to have a very exciting panel session. But before we get to that, I have two very good friends to introduce, two champions, in fact, the two high-level champions for climate action, Gonzalo Munoz from Chile for COP25 and Nigel Topping from the UK for COP26. What a brilliant job to be a climate change champion, but a lot of responsibility to get everybody to come with the commitments and the action and to deliver on the race to zero. I know that they're going to talk about that, and we have a very special day, something to celebrate, but I'll let Nigel and Gonzalo talk about that. Then we're going to come to some remarks from Selwin Hart, the Special Advisor for the UN Secretary General on Climate Action. And then we'll be back with our panel. So over to Gonzalo and Nigel.
Well, thanks so much, Paul. Indeed, we recognize that this is an enormous privilege for the two of us to have this role. And thank you for the Global Compact for setting this moment. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. For us, it's an absolute honor to be here. And we are also, of course, really excited for the panel discussion today amongst global leaders and to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the Race to Zero campaign during this summit. Despite this year being deeply affected by the global pandemic, concerns about climate change globally have remained at an all-time high. And this concern is leading to clear commitments and actions. The campaign, the Race to Zero campaign, now has over 4,500 members from across 92 countries racing to have emissions by 2030. That includes over 3,000 companies representing almost 15% of the global economy and close to 1,000 subnational governments whose combined carbon footprint is larger than India's. Those mobilizations and commitments really reflect very well the expected capacity from non-state actors around activating the ambition loop as expressed at the Paris Agreement. And also directly related to the pandemic, health-thirsty institutions themselves are alive to the urgency of addressing climate change, with 37 healthcare institutions covering over 3,000 hospitals that now sign up to Race to Zero. All these members recognize the value and the imperative of racing to a zero-carbon economy to build a healthier, safer, cleaner, and more resilient world for generations to come. We need all business, like all those that are part of the Global Compact around the world, also all cities, regions, universities, investors around the world to follow suit urgently. We're really grateful to all our partners who underpin the Race to Zero campaign and who are leading the way to halve emissions by 2030 by rallying actors from across the global economy to take action. But Nigel, please tell us quickly what we still need to see more of.
Great. Thank you, Gonzalo. Let me start by saying happy birthday, Race to Zero, and all the hundreds of partners in the Marrakesh Partnership, and particularly the partners driving the initiatives which make up the Race to Zero. It's fantastic to be here and really looking forward to the events throughout the summit. And as you say, this really rapid growth of the Race to Zero in the past 12 months has been really heartening, and it's really highlighted how the whole of society is committing to get to zero and to get to halving emissions by 2030. That's the new norm across all those non-state actors. And we know that members in the race are already running, they're already taking action against their commitments. We've seen many inspiring examples throughout the day on the Race to Zero channels. And I know we're going to hear a lot more in this session and throughout the breakouts coming up. But as Paul indicated, in recent reports like the SBTI's Taking the Temperature report, and we know in the upcoming Global Aggregation report, which is going to be released next week, there's still big gaps between ambition and action amongst many actors. So this has to be the year when we close that gap. It has to be a year of global action where concerted leadership in this year of the crucial COP26 means a turning point to these drastic emissions cuts that are needed to strengthen our global resilience, halt biodiversity loss, and create those high-quality jobs of the future zero-carbon economy. We heard loud and clear from Sir David Attenborough at the G7 just over the weekend that tackling climate change is now as much a political and communications challenge as it is a scientific or technological one. So it was really pleasing to see the call to action in the G7 communique for all actors to join the Race to Resilience and the Race to Zero. As I said, now is the time to turn these commitments into implementation and action. And we really hope this is what COP26 is going to be about, because we have the skills we need, and I think now we're showing the leadership and the will, but we've got to put this into action across all sectors of the economy in all countries in the world. If we act now, we can do this, but we need those who can race faster to do so. Many who are early to set bold targets are making fast progress and can ratchet up. We've got to support actors in harder to abate sectors to move as fast as they possibly can. We need to keep seeking those breakthroughs that we've named, those Race to Zero breakthroughs across all sectors of the economy. We need cities and regions and different actor types. You mentioned the healthcare actors, to help each other and learn to unlock faster action. And we need non-state actors to be telling governments what they need in terms of the bold policies to drive the ambition loop. So really looking forward to the panel and to the Race to Zero breakouts throughout the course of the summit to hear what's underway and how we can bridge the remaining ambition gap. And with that, I hand over to Selwin Hart, the Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on Climate Action. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, with less than 6 months to go before COP26 in Glasgow, we have no time to waste. While the world continues to deal with the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis worsens. Today, we are at 1.2 degrees Celsius of warming and already witnessing unprecedented climate extremes and volatility in every region and on every continent. Meanwhile, the science is clear. To stand a fighting chance of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels and preventing the worst impacts of climate change, we must reduce emissions by 45% from 2010 levels by 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050 at the latest. Every tenth of a degree of warming matters. The good news is that economics and technology are on our side. To make the deep emission cuts needed by 2030, we have all the necessary technologies available, and the global financial system is aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Over the past year, the political environment has improved, and we are seeing the Paris Agreement working as the key multilateral instrument to mobilize ambition and action in our fight against climate change. Last year at the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit, only 30% of global emissions were covered by net zero emissions targets. Today, countries representing 73% of global emissions have announced net zero targets by mid-century. And since the Climate Action Summit in 2019, 560 companies have joined the Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees Celsius campaign, representing a market cap of $13 trillion. This is equivalent to the GDP of China. This clearly shows that science-based targets and climate-related financial risk disclosure are becoming business prerequisites for credible climate action. The direction of travel is clear. Decarbonization of the global economy is inevitable. Today, I want to share the Secretary General's 3 climate priorities for the next few months. First, no effort must be spared to keep the 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement within reach. Every country, every city, every company, and every industry needs to join the Net Zero by 2050 coalition and follow up with concrete and credible near-term plans and pathways to achieve this long-term vision. Phasing out coal by 2030 in OECD countries and 2040 everywhere else is the single most important step to meeting the Paris goals. I urge you to join the Secretary General's call for no new coal after COP26. Second, we must also prepare, adapt, and build resilience. We need a breakthrough on adaptation, and this includes achieving a balanced allocation for mitigation and adaptation finance. It is a moral imperative, but there is also a clear business case for investing in early warning and climate resilience. Every $1 invested in climate resilient infrastructure results in over $6 in savings. Third, on climate finance, all financial flows, public and private, must be aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. The disclosure of climate-related financial risks must be mandatory everywhere, and we need to align COVID recovery spending with the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, our blueprint for recovery. The private sector has a key role to play in this transformation. We need all hands on deck. First, we need you to make the business case for renewables, enhance indices, and net zero by 2050 in all countries where you have operations or big parts of your supply chains. And I'm sure you firmly have in mind the huge commercial opportunities and benefits for those who move fastest and furthest, while others lagging behind face the risk of stranded assets. Second, we must see a step up in ambition from the hard to abate sectors, be it steel or cement, to shipping and aviation, to land transport and buildings. They must all have an action plan for net zero by 2050 with concrete intermediate goals and implementation plans for 2025 and 2030. These targets need to be scientifically robust, aligned to 1.5, and can be improved over time. Third, any credible net zero corporate strategy needs to place science-based decarbonization at its core. Offsets will never make your business model Paris aligned. Only science-based targets and reducing emissions in absolute terms throughout your operations and supply chains will. Disclose your climate-related financial risks. As we head towards COP26, there must be no doubt on the integrity and credibility of corporate climate action. Today, only 8% of companies with net zero targets have interim targets. Long-term commitments cannot distract us from the urgent action needed today. Net zero pledges need to be backed up by concrete plans and actions for immediate deep decarbonization. This is what the Business Ambition for 1.5 initiative is all about. Today, I call on you all to join the campaign. And if you are already part of the Business Ambition for 1.5 initiative, bring your customers and your suppliers along to COP26 in Glasgow. Distinguished business leaders, friends, this is the make or break here to confront the climate emergency. And we need to make every single month before Glasgow count. We need your voice to join that of the UN Secretary General in calling on governments to make the right choices. I thank you for your leadership and support and wish you an action-inspiring session. Thank you.
High-level champions, thank you and congratulations on the first birthday of Race to Zero. Look forward to all the progress we're going to see in the next year, and to Selwin Hart, the UN Special Advisor, for those strong remarks on what a critical year it is. And we've heard, in some ways, it quite simply, we know what we have to do: reduce emissions in half by 2030, create a net zero economy. It's about doing it now. And this is some of what we're going to come on to in the panel. We also heard about the recent report from Science Based Targets Initiative, which is a collaboration of UN Global Compact, CDP, World Resources Institute, WWF, and We Mean Business. And the report last week, looking at the stock markets of the G7 countries and those companies, found that at this point in time, on average, those stock markets are on a temperature pathway of 2.9 degrees. Now, we need to get that down. And the good news is companies that have a science-based target are doing that. The science-based target, the 5-year target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the science. So we see that companies with science-based targets can really make a difference. And the G7 environmental ministers called a few weeks ago for every company to set science-based targets. We heard from Selwin about climate disclosure. Having worked on that for 20 years at CDP, it was brilliant to see the G7 say they're going to mandate climate disclosure, and China then to say they will do the same thing. So great progress, more to do. We're going to move on to the panel, which is going to talk about the action that business is taking to secure a sustainable, climate-safe future. We have some really ambitious business leaders who are already taking action with us to talk about what they're doing and talk about what more needs to be done. So I'm very honoured to introduce our 4 panellists: Damilola Ogunbiyi, the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General's Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy; Mr. Suphachai, Chearavanont, the chairman and CEO of CP Group from Thailand; Keith Anderson, the chief executive of Scottish Power from the UK; and Graziela Chaluppe dos Santos Malucelli, the COO and executive vice president of operations from Novozymes. So we're going to start with a fairly quick, short round, no more than a minute each, for you all just to say, where are you dialing in from? Let's ground this global meeting. Where are you coming from? And if you had either a gift to the Race to Zero, what can you contribute to the Race to Zero, or a wish of what you'd like to see from the Race to Zero, we'd love to hear about that in this first lightning round. And Damilola, we'll start with you, please.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for having me. Greetings from New York, and happy birthday to the Race to Zero campaign. I just want to extend my warm wishes, and one particular topic that's obviously dear to my heart is the role of universal access, and the fact that as we are trying to get to a point of net zero by 2050, we have to recognize that if we do not make sure that people have universal access to electricity and clean cooking by 2030, it is actually technically almost impossible to get that. So I guess focusing on really great short-term things for 2030 to be achieved, but making sure it includes energy access, justice, inclusiveness at the heart of the energy transition. So it takes energy transition of all continents instead of just the high emitters. Thank you.
Thanks, Damilola, and universal access. What an important wish. Suphachai.
Yes, good evening. This is Suphachai from Thailand. Good evening from Khao Yai, Thailand. I would like to congratulate for the first birthday of Race to Zero. And I feel very excited to see the upcoming Glasgow. My first gift is that I'm very glad that CP Group would join this race. And my second gift is that our goals is to get to net zero carbon by 2030. This is our goals that we have set throughout the whole organization with more than 350,000 employees. Thank you.
Suphachai, thank you. What wonderful gifts. Keith.
Hi there, and Luke, thank you for letting me join you. This is it's a fantastic day to kick this session off, and a great way to think about it. I'm speaking to you from Glasgow. In fact, if I look out my window there just now, I can see at the centre where COP26 will be held. It is literally just a stone throw away from my office, and we're really looking forward to COP26 coming to Glasgow and making that a huge kickstart on the race to net zero and getting us all to net zero. My gift, two gifts for you. There you go. You're going to get two for the price of one. Very quickly, number one gift is we are committing and working with Glasgow to make Glasgow the first net zero city in the United Kingdom. So we've created our own internal race between the cities in the UK, and we want to get Glasgow there first. And our belief is that because of the difficulty for a city like Glasgow, where 80% of the population are in flats and tenemented buildings, the challenges that creates for transport and heat, if we can get Glasgow to be the first city to be net zero, then it'll be easier for every other city in the country, and that'll show how possible it is and how quickly we can do it. And the second quick gift is we're committing to spending £10 billion between now and 2025 to help drive that race to net zero, and help drive the investment that's needed in all of the grid infrastructure, in transport, and in electricity generation to hit net zero. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith, and very exciting real money and investment which we need to solve the climate emergency, and also to have a business partnering with a city to create net zero. Wonderful. And Graziela.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for having me here. I'm talking from Denmark at Novozymes, a global leading biotech and biosolutions company. As a company, we combine biology, science, and sustainability, and that's what we do over 30 industries and 130 countries. And I want to say that we were one of the first companies in the world actually to put forward the 1.5 degree ambition and the net zero and the science-based target. So that's what we do. We take climate on action. So from race to zero, I have a wish. I want to share the great work we have done in 1 year. And I'm sharing here with 6,000 colleagues at Novozymes. And I want to invite all of us to do the same. It matters to spread and to inspire and catalyze our climate actions together.
Thanks, Graziela. And thank you to the panelists for bringing wonderful gifts and also being very efficient with time. A great start to the panel. I'm feeling more excited than I was. So we're going to get a bit more in-depth discussion. And Suphachai, you have this wonderful net zero commitment. I think you said by 2030. I want to check that because that's super ambitious, yes, which we love. But can you tell us a little bit about what CP Group, as a multinational Asian company operating across a number of sectors, is doing to achieve that net zero goal?
The very first thing is to make all of our people realize that the way we are consuming from consumer, from company as a company and economy, the way we are moving forward is not sustainable. The way we are consuming all the national resource, we keep borrowing and burning, and how can we keep doing this? In the past 30 years, since I graduated from the university, I think the temperature have mostly raised during this period of time. Now, for CP Group, we are agro and food-based company. We have to go through and work with all the partners throughout our supply chain. And all our employees have to realize and also work together as one goal. For business, making goals is always, our way. After making goals is about setting up the right KPIs. After setting up the right KPIs, it's all about executions. So throughout our supply chains, under CP Group, we are in agro and food, in retails. I think, the partners that are working with us across the industry are probably more than 100,000. And we are working with a lot of farmers, as we are in the feed mill business, for example. We actually are dealing with, again, millions of farmers across the country and many countries that we invested in. So it's very important that how can we actually work and set the right goals. And fortunately, all this technology, blockchain and traceabilities, GPS, IoT, is allow us to track and be able to work with all these partners and setting the same goals. Sometimes, it is to really solve the problem. It is just as simple as allowing the forest to grow and not continue to cut more forests, the land use issue, etc. So if we are going to procure anything to our business, we have to look at the total traceabilities and how those farmers and all the middlemen are actually responsible for how they actually come up with all these raw materials. So this is, again, the commitment. And as I say, I have been to the northern part of Thailand, for example, where the mountains have no trees. But as soon as people stop invading the mountains, as soon as they stop planting this kind of economy monocrops, the trees actually stick up by itself without doing anything. So maybe sometime, to really achieve something, we need to just maybe as simple as stop doing something.
Thank you, Suphachai. Very healthy challenge. Sometimes we do need to stop doing things. And the importance of the supply chain and engaging the partners a business is involved in. Now, Graziela, to you, obviously Novozymes operates out of Denmark, your headquarters, but as a global company, the US, India, Brazil, how can a multinational company work to ensure that the climate actions are conducted across the whole organization and not just in the headquarters?
Sure. I think it's pretty important, Paul, that we focus on all the geographies, right? It's key to understand, the energy ecosystems and, what is actually the challenge we have out there in our footprint everywhere where we are located. And I think here is important to say it's important to have a role modeling from the headquarter point of view. So let me actually share some of the achievements we have had with our Danish operations. So we have reduced CO2 emissions out of our operations by 70% already. We actually have transitioned out of fossil fuel completely in our operations. We have actually engaged on joint agreements on green steam, for instance, where we have a partner that we have enabled them actually to get out of fossil fuel burning coal, a way of coal completely, and we have our operations 100% based on renewable electricity since 2011. So it's pretty much about putting things in action. We are rolling out the same from headquarters then everywhere where we are located. China, for instance, US, recently we have transitioned to 100% solar energy in one of our most largest sites in North America. And we are continuing to do so, and we are also investing on renewable investments. So it's about a walking the talk, right? And I think it's a great momentum right now because there's a lot of scrutiny. The companies are supposed to show transparency, collaboration, right? So that's what is important. And together with our customers, we do the same. We actually have saved last year 49 million tons of CO2 from global transportations because of our biosolutions. And that has helped us out to actually take 20 million cars out of the roads. So that's what we come up with, right? With our biosolutions out there with our customers in the world. but also together with governments, associations, NGOs, industries, finding pathways forward.
Great, thanks, Graziela. And to remove fossil fuels from your business is something that everybody needs to do. So great that you've done it already. And it's a good segue to you, Damilola. Obviously, the energy sector, well understood, is responsible for a very substantial percentage of global greenhouse gas emissions. In the lead up to the UN high-level dialogue on energy taking place in September, you are calling for an energy revolution, is my understanding. Can you tell us more about that dialogue and what energy companies can do?
Thank you so much for that question. And it's kind of beyond energy companies. It's for people to understand that we have a lot of climate conversations, and COP26 is really important. And I'm also co-chair on the energy transition campaign with Alok Sharma. However, energy is beyond just power sector or like an inconvenience. You to be able to have the job creation we need and equitable, and people just live dignified lives, they need enough energy to do that. And we feel that this is a perfect opportunity. It's the first time in 40 years the UN is actually having a dialogue on energy, that we look at not just what we have to be transitioned in the large economies, which I mentioned earlier, but how do we make sure that, take the continent I'm from, Africa, where there's still 1 billion people who barely have the same amount of energy as like Germany, create 81 megawatts. How do we gigawatts? Sorry. How do we make sure it is in a just way, and we don't? We think about people and planet, and I think that is the most particular thing. And one of the ways we're trying to do it is just like the Race to Zero, kind of what we're calling energy compacts, where organizations, everything from Google to the UK government, are signing up to say, how exactly are you going to achieve SDG 7? So apart from what you're doing within your organizations, how are you going to help developing countries or other sovereigns to get there? So we're really excited about it because we only have 9 years to go. So we need to be talking about specific actions like you've asked, and we need to be able to track how we're doing. Unfortunately, this year being a horrible year has moved 150 million people back into extreme poverty. And I guess one of the things we're trying to do is like I said earlier, when you're talking about the climate discussion and the energy discussion and getting to net zero, we need to make sure we take along people as well as planet.
Completely agree, Damilola. In a sense, we live on the planet. We need to look after it, and it will look after ourselves. Hopefully, we're not there yet. Keith, you run an energy company. Obviously, much debate around the need to transition from fossil fuels to low and zero carbon energy. How is Scottish Power working on that challenge and opportunity?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and it kind of relates well to a lot of what Damilola just said as well about energy is about energy companies, but it goes much wider than that, right across the whole of society, and it's important to think about it in that way. But look, we as a company, we started on this transition about 25 to 30 years ago, when we started getting involved in renewables, and we started to think, see, feel that was the future, that was the way forward, and that became a core part of our strategy. So we've driven that all the way through. If you go back then, we were predominantly a coal generating company. That's what we inherited as an organisation. And we have now shut down all of our coal plant, and we've switched off and got rid of all of our gas plant. And in shutting down our coal plant, we actually turned off and shut down every coal plant in the whole of Scotland. So we helped decarbonise the entire country by doing this and creating that transition. And it's been a huge strategic exercise and a massive transition for the company and for the country to go through all of that. And Scotland, last year, Scotland achieved about 97% of all of its energy coming from renewable sources, which was a great place to be as well in terms of electricity production. So we're doing well, and that's good. But as a company, we need to go much further than that. That's not enough. And that's the importance of things like science-based targets. It's actually making us focus on who we are, what we do, how we act, and how we behave. and that is critical as well. So it's good that we build wind farms, it's good we build solar plants and offshore wind as well, but we need to do more than that. It's about how we run our buildings, it's about how we run our fleet of vehicles, it's about how we travel and get people from building to building and city to city. And we need to decarbonise all of our behaviour as well. And then we need to take it even further beyond that. We need to look all the way down through our supply chain, where we buy all of our equipment, who we're buying it from, and get them also to decarbonise. And I think that's part of the critical thing about this, is it's not enough just to look at one bit of your business or the obvious bit of your business. You need to look at the entire business operation, your entire supply chain, and you need to look at all of the challenges built into it. And it's not easy. There are big challenges in there, but there are also big opportunities in terms of the future and in terms of what you can do and what you can deliver. But you need to look at the entire picture, you need to look at everything, and you need to start putting in place targets, measures, changes, behavioural changes, commercial changes to your entire organisation to drive that through. And we're doing well. We're not perfect, but we've set ourselves the targets. We've set ourselves science-based targets to get us down to below the 1.5, and that's the critical bit and the crucial bit. And we are starting to work our way down that now and starting to drive that forward. And as I say, it takes us looking at not just what we build, but right through the entire behaviours, right through the, if you like, the DNA of the company. Everything we're doing as a company is seen now through the lens of net zero. And that's where we need to get to, and that's where every company needs to get to in the future.
Great, thanks, Keith. And clearly, Scottish Power is an early pioneer, and the holistic, strategic, and systematic approach. We must do this everywhere for net zero. As ever in a panel like this, time flies. So many great contributions and actions from the panelists. You can all see the clock. So we're going to kind of come to the last round. If you can keep them brief, please. We need to try to stay on time. As here we are in June, we know we have COP26 in November. What would you like to one thing you would either contribute to COP26 or one thing you would like to see from the negotiations? And Graziela, we'll start with you, please.
So I think I actually had 3 wishes, but if I can pick one, it's definitely about integrating agricultural ecosystems with the climate action. And ensure that we are going to move forcibly on the transformation of food systems. That's where Novozymes with our biosolutions has a lot to offer and contribute to. If I can put one more wish, is also that we actually have a final agreement on carbon pricing and carbon market. So we drive long-term investments and short-term, mid-term action.
Thanks, Graziela. Keith?
Yeah, look, as we get to COP, I think that the biggest driver for us is communities and people. And a critical bit all of this, people talk about a just transition. We can't do this to people. We can't change people's lives for them. We need to get people bought into it. So that's about working with communities. It's about working with citizens. It's about creating opportunities. It's about showing them an easy path so that as people are making choices in their life, whether it's about the car they drive, whether it's about how they go on holiday, whether it's about how they heat their home, whether it's about where they buy their energy, whether it's about whether they use public transport, etc. We need to make the decarbonised choice, the net zero choice, the obvious choice, the easy choice. And that's what's incumbent, I think, upon us as companies and organisations, is make this easy for people, make it easy for people to get involved, and make it easy for people to understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And then people will come with us. They'll take the leadership, they'll understand the leadership, and they'll follow us on the journey and work with us to get that journey.
Completely agree. Keith, Suphachai?
Yeah, for CP Group, we have set forth for the next 10 years because we will generate 1,600 megawatt renewable worth of energy consumptions. We want to do all of that over the renewable energy. The investment over this effort would be about $2.5 billion US. But fortunately, by doing renewable energy with the support from the government and the right policies, it's actually a business in itself, a sustainable business in itself, not just a cost. Secondly, we also calculate that we should grow 16 million rai of trees in order to cover our carbon footprint for the next 10 years. And that is 6 million acres. This is also our commitment throughout our area of operation, including how we will work with the farmers in our supply chain. And thirdly, we want to drive our waste and food waste, especially in the whole operation, to a zero in the next 10 years. So that is what CP Group is committed to do beyond other things along all this climate change issue we need to address. And lastly, if I could say anything to the COP26, is that all the stock exchange throughout the world, if each of the government can make the requirement that all the private listed company can make the goals and the report over the zero emissions goals, I think that would really drive the whole world economy, and we probably would see that the goals to achieve in the next 30 years by 2050 is really obtainable, and it is tangible because everyone have the same awareness and racing towards the same thing. And also on education, our younger generations going through the educational system, we have to move from the 2.0 education system to the 4.0. And part of the 4.0 education system is not only about digital, but it's also about sustainability. All these goals and how we keep the world, our home as long as we can, is part of our younger generation to continue to do so. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Suphachai. Very much agree. Damilola.
Okay, I realize we're at time, so I'm going to keep it short. I don't believe that we can achieve our goals in energy, especially universal access, without the private sector, without the business leaders like we have today, literally committing that this is what we have to put together. So that's why I'm really excited about COP. How do we change our normal kind of pledge culture to actual actions? And how do we go beyond that? It's such a big opportunity, the energy transition, economically as well as jobs. And we just really, really need to use COP26 to showcase this to a lot of countries that are on the fence, and helping through private sector and businesses today, countries discover how to actually get to low carbon economies, or start off with low carbon economies for a lot of countries that are not really high on the emission spectrum. So that is what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
No, thanks, Damilola. And this has been a really rich exchange and a panel. And thank you all for bringing concrete actions as well as other desires for the future. We heard from the high-level champions that everybody's got to get involved, set commitments, take action, implement. More than 10,000 organizations, companies and cities disclosed through CDP last year. There are thousands of companies and other non-state actors committed to the race to zero. We need more. 1,400 companies committed to set a science-based target. These are some of the fundamental actions and commitments that need to be taken, and then they need to be delivered, and that progress needs to be disclosed annually. So thank you for the very rich conversation. This is going to continue on the road to Glasgow, and I'm now very pleased to give the floor to the COP26 President, Alok Sharma from the United Kingdom, and then to Sander Ojiambo, the CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone, and thank you to the UN Global Compact for organising this important event. Friends, 2015 was a major year for the world. In September that year, world leaders adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, including Goal 13, taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And just 3 months later, the Paris Agreement was signed, achieving what many thought was out of reach. Global consensus on the enormous threat posed by climate change and a shared framework to address it, including the headline commitment to try to limit the average rise in global temperatures to below 2 degrees and close to 1.5 degrees. And that 1.5 degree limit is critical because every fraction of a degree makes a difference. The science shows that a temperature rise of 2 degrees rather than 1.5 would mean hundreds of millions more people affected by climate change. And indeed, twice as many plants and 3 times as many insect species losing vast swathes of their habitat. But since the Paris Agreement was signed, the world has not done nearly enough. And now, to keep 1.5 degrees within reach, to keep a 1.5 alive, we must halve global emissions by 2030. And to do that, we must act now and make COP26 the moment that every country and every part of society embraces their responsibility to protect our precious planet. To achieve this, as COP26 President, I'm pushing for action on 4 key goals. Firstly, to put the world on a path to driving down emissions until they reach net zero by the middle of the century. And this is essential to keep the 1.5 degree limit within reach. Secondly, to protect people and nature from the effects of our changing climate. Third, to get finance flowing to climate action, both public and private. And fourth, working together across borders and across society. And we're urging every country to act, to set net zero targets and short-term emission reduction targets to take them there. And of course, to tackle vital areas like power, like transport, and like nature. And we urge them to consign coal power to history, end the sale of polluting vehicles, and tackle deforestation. However, governments alone cannot achieve the change we need. We need action across the real economy. And so Race to Zero is central to our COP26 presidency. We're urging companies and investors and cities and regions and organizations of all kinds to sign up, to play their part in keeping 1.5 degrees within reach, and make clear to governments that climate action will be welcomed and not resisted across the economy. What is so important about the Race to Zero is that it requires companies to set short-term targets based on the science to get them there to net zero. So net zero is not just some vague aspiration, but a concrete plan. And I'm hugely grateful to Nigel and Gonzalo for all the work that they have put into making it such a success. And of course, to the UN Global Compact for driving the business ambition for 1.5 commitment through which so many companies have joined the Race to Zero. What we're seeing is a real change in the global economy. In 2015, when the Paris Agreement was signed and the SDGs were adopted, a movement was just beginning for businesses to set emission reduction targets. Today, we have over 3,000 companies and 170 investors signed up to the Race to Zero, with a huge range of sectors represented, from fashion to food, from cars to cement. By signing up to Race to Zero, companies make clear to investors and customers that they're serious about their role in tackling the climate crisis and that they're determined to take the enormous opportunities presented by the move to clean economies, which of course are enormous. But even as we reduce emissions, the impacts of our changing climate will continue to intensify. And so it's vital that we protect people and nature from its effects. And this is central to Sustainable Development Goal 13 and to the Paris Agreement, and is another key goal for our COP26 presidency. Again, we're urging all countries to act, and we're inviting organizations and cities and investors to join the Race to Resilience, the sister campaign to Race to Zero. Because if we all play our part, governments, business, civil society, and more, we can protect people and nature and keep 1.5 degrees alive and make 2021 the year that delivers for the planet. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, business leaders and friends, Or perhaps I should simply just address you as climate champions. First, I want to thank all of our esteemed speakers and panelists for joining this plenary session today. This has been an important forum for discussion about what is required to make COP26 a success, about the absolute necessity of limiting the rise in global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the urgent need to uphold a shared vision of a livable future. Or as COP26 President Alok Sharma has put it, to keep 1.5 alive. At the UN Global Compact, we are determined to help make this vision a reality. Our strategy focuses on harnessing the power of business to take ambitious, credible climate action and deliver dramatic cuts in carbon emissions. More and more companies are finally heeding the stark warnings of climate science and aligning their operations with a 1.5 degree trajectory. Climate action benefits human and planetary health, builds business resiliency, and helps ensure future business performance. Our business ambition for 1.5 degrees campaign is showing the way. Launched by the UN Global Compact and the Science Based Targets Initiative, the campaign challenges businesses to set targets for reduced carbon emissions in line with the goal of net zero global emissions by 2050. More than 500 companies representing upwards of $13 trillion in market capitalization have signed on to Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees. But despite this momentum, the Global Compact's latest report shows that there's a huge deficit in climate ambition, especially in business sectors with the heaviest emissions. Published in partnership with the global nonprofit CDP and the Science Based Targets Initiative, our report confirms that major economies are still far from alignment with the Paris Climate Agreement. This shortfall represents an enormous missed opportunity to unlock the economic potential of climate change mitigation. When heavy emitters set science-based targets for reduced emissions, entire market indexes can shift towards alignment with a 1.5 degree future, paving the way for the rest of the economy to follow. Right now, business leaders have the power to create a snowball effect by tackling emissions throughout their operations and by engaging with suppliers and customers to help them reduce their own carbon footprints. Governments, investors, and financial institutions must incentivize science-based target setting to bring the mitigation breakthrough that we need in nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. It won't be easy, but if we work together toward that breakthrough in the lead up to COP26, I have no doubt that a sustainable, climate-safe future is within our reach. Thank you.